China celebrates its Lunar New Year and welcomes the Year of the Rabbit. Hello, I'm Anand Naidu. This is The Heat. Chinese, both at home and around the world, are celebrating Spring Festival. 2023 is the year of the rabbit, and festivities got underway with China Media Group's major Spring Festival Gala. The massive television show is watched by hundreds of millions of Chinese every year as families get together across the country. Meanwhile, Chinese and people of Chinese ancestry around the globe are also celebrating the festive occasion and annual holiday. Joining us from Beijing now is Victor Gao. He is chair professor at Soochow University. With us too from Beijing is Zoon Ahmed Khan. She is a research fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. Joining the discussion from New York is Wayne Ho. He is president and CEO of the Chinese American Planning Council. And also with us from Beijing is Gabriel Yue Yin. He is a CGTN America correspondent. Welcome to all of you to the show and happy Chinese New Year. Victor Gao, people are out on the streets again. We see railway stations, airports busier than ever in China. Millions of people traveling over the holidays. But now with the reopening, what's the mood like in the country this Spring Festival?
Thank you very much for having me. First of all, Happy New Year to everyone in China and everyone in the world. The Chinese New Year is celebrated not only by people of Chinese ethnic background, but also by people like the Koreans and the Vietnamese. And you know, in the world, there are about 60 million to about 80 million Chinese diasporas almost in every corner in the world. So this is truly a global celebration of the Spring Festival. Now, I was walking around in Beijing, where I live right now, for the past several days, and I see people and the shops opening and the gathering of people to celebrate the firecrackers in other cities in China. In a sense, the normalcy is coming back, and the Chinese people are crossing through the wall of fire as far as the pandemic is concerned. And I think this is the first time in 3 years that people go out into the open and visit relatives and travel throughout the country to celebrate the Chinese New Year. The Chinese Vice Premier Liu He in Davos even said about 5 billion people trips will be made during the Chinese Spring Festival. Normally we say it's about 2 billion person trips to be made in the Chinese New Year. So this is truly a happy occasion of family reunion and a rededication to all the values and traditions throughout our history. And this is a joyful occasion for everyone involved. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Victor, and Happy New Year to you as well. Gabriel, great to have you with us on the show as a guest. You are, of course, a correspondent based here in Washington. Last year you were in Washington, but this year you are celebrating the Spring Festival at home in Beijing. What's it like being back in Beijing with your family and friends?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on the show, and Happy New Year to everyone. So this is actually the first time in 3 years that I get to spend the Chinese New Year with my family back home. So there's definitely a lot of weight in that. And I didn't realize how nostalgic I was until I was going through this process again. This year in my family, we decided to stick to the old-fashioned way. We did an exhaustive house cleaning. We made dumplings together, and we put up some new New Year's decoration. I can actually show you around a little bit the things that we've done. So basically, we didn't do much, but these are the things that, for example, people in my parents' generation really stick to. Like we put up something that's red and festive, and we got us some new house plants. For example, this is my mom's new favorite thing in the house, and usually I'm not allowed to get this near, but today she'll make an exception. And here's my mom taking care of our new house plants. Say hi.
Hi, Happy New Year to you.
Thank you, Happy New Year, and thank you very much for this. So this is something that parents always do on Chinese New Year's, that they give red envelope of cash to their kids, hoping that this cash would disperse all the bad spirits. I mean, getting money to disperse all the bad spirits. Who wouldn't want that? So yeah, there are a lot of traditions that sort of was revived this year because people are reuniting with their families. And as it was the case for me, it was also the case for many people in China. On social media, we saw many people celebrating the Chinese New Year for the first time in 3 or 4 years with their families, and there were a lot of very heartwarming moments in that.
Zoon, great to have you with us as well. Happy New Year. Spring Festival, of course, is being celebrated all across China. I want to play you a little bit of video of how it's being commemorated at the Great Wall. Let's watch.
If you want a taste of Chinese culture during the Spring Festival, this is one of the best places to be. We're right next to the Great Wall of China, and what's taking place now is an annual Miaohui, or temple fair. For centuries, these carnivals of lively performances and vendors selling everything from local snacks to handicrafts have provided great family fun and have been a staple for Beijing locals during the Chinese New Year.
So, Zoon, as a non-Chinese person living in China, what does this holiday mean for you, and how are you celebrating it?
Anand, firstly, thank you for having on the program. A very happy New Year to all of the viewers, everyone celebrating. This year, I mean, this is my 7th year in living in China, and it's the first time that I'm actually celebrating it like Chinese families usually do. So I'm not currently in Beijing. I'm in Anhui province, a small tea-growing village in Chuzhou, in the outskirts of Chuzhou city. And many people would know this as a village close to Huanshan Mountain, a famous mountain of China. For me this year, I mean, it's been about being very lucky to be invited by a family and really celebrating how Chinese people do, which is spending a lot of quality time with family, a lot of red envelopes, a lot of cooking activities, and a lot of catching up. So that's what it is this year for me, and I'm incredibly grateful to see that. And also, like Victor Gao and Gabriel mentioned, this is a year after 3 years that many people are getting together with their families. So of course, if I had to give people a comparison, like Christmas or Eid, it feels exactly like that, where grandparents, younger people, everyone comes together, just, catches up, enjoys quality time, also watches the Spring Gala, which is a way to, reconnect. And another interesting thing is that, as a Muslim, we on Eid, on such activities, we pay respects to our ancestors as well. And that's exactly what I also witnessed. So, of course, I mean, Chinese New Year has been every year an opportunity to get together with friends, with people I care about. And this time to really feel like, a part of a family gathering is extremely meaningful.
And Zoon, you say you are in a village which is close to the mountains.
Yes.
Would that be very different, the celebrations there, would that be very different from, say, what's going on in Beijing?
Very different. So we have almost not stepped out of the house. We've only walked around some of the tea growing areas. And also, as I mentioned, we paid respects to our host family's mother's grave. And that was quite meaningful for me. And most people are just staying at home, cooking. We have the house is decorated. I haven't been here before, but exactly as Gabriel showed, there are a lot of red decorations. There's a lot of festive environment, and there are a lot of fireworks. If people follow me on Twitter, I posted a bit about the fireworks. I think that's also a little different because fireworks are not common in big cities like Beijing or Shanghai, but they are very common. So in outskirts or rural areas. So it's a lot like going to a village in Pakistan in some ways, It's a lot more like, I would imagine we celebrating Basant or Eid maybe 10 years ago, even in big cities like where I'm from, Lahore. So definitely much more, it's very cozy, a lot of, food. It's all about food, and it's a lot about just sitting together, catching up, and relaxing. And I think I'm just so incredibly grateful because I was a little worried, maybe I'll feel like an outsider, but the environment is so relaxed that I literally feel like, I don't feel like an outsider at all. And I think that is what family gatherings are about. That's what this kind of holiday is about. It's about making people feel at home, even if they're not from your own family. So definitely, I would recommend every foreigner, if you have the opportunity, definitely try to spend Chinese New Year in rural parts of China, where the experience is different and the view here is just incredible.
Wayne Ho, happy New Year of the Rabbit to you. You are, of course, in New York, and there is a huge Chinese community here in the United States of America who are also celebrating the Lunar New Year. Unfortunately, this year, the beginning of this festival has been marked by tragedy, by a mass shooting at a dance studio in Los Angeles on the west coast of the United States. That's a place where Asian Americans were celebrating the New Year. How is the Chinese community across the country reacting to this very tragic event?
First, happy Lunar New Year to everyone and all the viewers, and thank you for inviting me today. It's been a tough time for the Asian American community and the Chinese American community across the United States. This was the first time in 3 years it's actually felt like Lunar New Year in New York City and across the United States. And that's because starting in early 2020, that was when the pandemic reached the United States. And in most Chinese American neighborhoods, from Chinatowns to other neighborhoods, we saw that Asian American businesses were struggling 2 months, 3 months before the United States put itself on pause and shut down all non-essential businesses and services. So that's why there was a sense of optimism and hope entering this year of the rabbit. We knew that parades were coming back, families were coming back together, nonprofit organizations like mine were going to hold our annual events again, businesses were excited. And then in New York City, we wake up on Sunday morning and hear about the tragedy that happened in Monterey Park, California. And it's another example of hate and violence against the Asian American community. So it's been a very challenging time where we are trying to celebrate the Lunar New Year. We are hopeful for the year of the rabbit, because we started seeing that we are exiting the pandemic and we're starting to see true recovery across our communities. But it's also been a tough time where we're speaking to elected officials, Asian American leaders across the country, where once again, we're trying to figure out how we can deal with the rise in violence against our community members.
Victor Gao, you were telling us a moment ago that, of course, the Lunar New Year is not just celebrated in China. There are other countries where it's celebrated. Vietnam, you mentioned, South Korea, and also in Thailand. We have this report on the festival in Phuket in Thailand. Let's watch it.
If you didn't already know it was the year of the rabbit, you soon would. Giant rabbit figures dominate this display in Phuket Old Town, a place for many to take photos. Elsewhere, red lanterns adorn the shops and restaurants. The colour red is thought to bring good fortune. Many people wear red clothing. This is Phuket's Chinatown, famous for its Sino-Portuguese architecture, and where Chinese tourists head to celebrate New Year.
Victor, so in China, as well as these other countries where the Lunar New Year is celebrated, how much is family and tradition at the center of these celebrations?
For the New Year celebration in China and in the Chinese communities throughout the world, and also in countries like Korea and Vietnam, for example, and as you mentioned in Thailand, where there are lots of ethnic Chinese communities over there, I think there are several things. One is definitely family reunion, and each individual need to travel back, whatever the distance, back to home, and join their families to observe traditions for 7 days in a row, or even 15 days in a row. And in rural areas, it may be even up to 1 month. And each day will be marked with profound significance and meaning, symbolism, lots of food, for example, and traditions, etc. Now, on the second level, that is the communities, because when you talk about line dance, etc., then they are performed by the villagers together rather than purely by family members. So this is from individual to family to communities, and then on a much larger scale to civilizations. So you are talking about the hierarchical level of cultures, meanings, traditions, etc. And by joining in the Spring Festival, you really live throughout these generations of traditions which lasted for thousands of years and which are expected to last for, millenniums to come. And also the Chinese Spring Festival is unique in the sense that it is really observing the natural cycle of events, because this is not related to any one particular historical figure, for example. It is basically part of nature. It's the part of the natural cycle of events. So by observing Spring Festival, people or mankind are rejoined with nature again on a very prominent day in a very prominent season. So we are talking about the merging of humans with nature.
Victor, you were talking a moment ago about the food that is consumed over this festival. Zoon Ahmed also told us about the food that's consumed. Are there dishes that are unique to these days, or is it just normal Chinese fare?
Dumplings. I think when you talk about the Spring Festival throughout China and throughout the Chinese communities, dumplings will be the indispensable dish, because dumplings represent full and complete happiness. Everyone joins in making the dumpling, and everyone joins in, and one piece of dumpling embodied everything you need. For example, good nutrition, good food, good material, all the symbolism, etc. And dumpling is enjoyed throughout China, throughout the world, in Chinese communities, and I hope more and more people in other countries will also start to enjoy dumplings.
Gabriel, I want to talk about an event that happens every New Year, and that is the Spring Festival Gala. Well, this year, the China Media Group Spring Festival Gala was watched by hundreds of millions of Chinese. That, of course, has that huge audience every year. This is a major nationally shared experience in China. Why is it such a huge cultural phenomenon? And tell us something about the people who take part in the event.
Yeah, so this Spring Festival Gala is like this major pop culture event that happens in China every Spring Festival. Actually, it's this the gala itself is a massive show, and it's very very diverse. It's almost about like 4 hours long. It's actually a little bit more than that. But you can expect a large variety of shows. You see pop stars singing after live stand-up comedians, or you see, for example, live dramas next to a traditional dance. So it really represents this diverse of interest in a country like China, where there are a lot of regional habits or preferences. So that's one of the reasons why people are watching it and discussing it for a very extended period of time, even after the Spring Festival. And another reason is that people really, for example, in my generation, we grew up watching the Spring Festival Gala during Chinese New Year. And a lot of generations actually do. Even before the invention of smartphone and social media, the Spring Festival Gala was what was holding people together during the eve of the Chinese New Year. And people were, gathered in front of the TV, discussing the shows. And what's so interesting and so fascinating to see is that even today, with social media, with smartphone, with so many other distractions, people would still stick to this tradition and actually talk about it. So I think, as you very well put, this is a nationally shared experience, and there's definitely a lot of cultural value in that.
Zoon, this is a major event. This television gala during the Spring Festival, it is watched by hundreds of millions of Chinese, as I said. It's a great showcase for Chinese culture. As Gabriel mentioned, we see dance, song, even theater in the hours that this is screened. I expect a lot of non-nationals watch it too. What does it tell us about today's modern China?
I do have a few observations on, and like Gabriel mentioned, of course, for us too, while having dinner, everyone knew, okay, time for the Spring Gala. We switch it on, and this is what happened last year when I was in Beijing with a group of friends who were all foreigners. So it's definitely part of that experience of Chinese New Year, and it has been so pre-smartphone age, right? So that's number one. What I observe in the Spring Gala is that, of course, it really expresses Chinese culture, heritage. There's pop and traditional music. There's all kinds of very, very important messaging as well. So, for instance, it's a very family-friendly gala. Chinese New Year is a family holiday. So you have people, grandparents, grandchildren, all age groups sitting together and enjoying something that's aesthetic, decent, and appeasing, right? This is very important. Number two, I observe that, this gala also represents, it sends a very important message to all segments of society. So I truly appreciated, for instance, how there were parts that were, going back to stories of frontliners, people who are doing all kinds of, someone maybe a police officer, a fireman, a driver, all kinds of people of society are represented. Their stories are shared. I really like that part. And that's why, you're watching something that's telling stories of an entire nation who are building this country together, who are part of this experience of being Chinese together. So I think this is something which I hope, more countries, more people can realize that we need to recognize and appreciate the hard work that ordinary people put in their day-to-day lives that's making countries' growth, development, and way forward possible. So that's also a very important aspect, I think. And another one is that there was a special section for other countries. 11 countries, singers were part of the gala, and Pakistan was one of them. So I was also very excited about that, to see that, obviously it's showing millennia-old history, culture, the diversity that China represents, all segments of society that make up the country for what it is, and also, China's growing engagement with the world. We saw that in a very special section where different singers from different continents were engaged to sing in their language, and how hundreds of millions of Chinese people can see that.
Wayne, the Lunar New Year is now an official state holiday in the state of California here in the United States. How important is that for Chinese Americans here? And does it actually give Chinese Americans a greater sense of identity?
It's great that California is recognizing Chinese New Year as a state holiday. We know that too often before as a holiday, we had Chinese, Koreans, Tibetans, and other communities that were celebrating the Lunar New Year take their kids out of school. It would be an unexcused absence, or they would try to take time off of work, and it would make it complicated with their employers. So it's great that California is recognizing it as a holiday. We're hoping that it spreads across to all 50 states across the United States. Right now in New York, there is an effort by our state legislators and our city legislators to make sure that Lunar New Year is not just a school holiday, but it's a holiday that is recognized. 10% of New York State's population is Asian American. Nearly 20% of New York City's population is Asian American, and the majority are Chinese and Koreans and other Asian ethnic groups that do recognize Lunar New Year. So that's why we need to make sure that, just like the Jewish holidays here in New York and other ethnic holidays that are recognized, that it is important for Lunar New Year, for the fastest growing racial group in the United States, which are Asian Americans, that this holiday is truly recognized, so that all families can take the time off work, take their kids out of school, and have a chance to celebrate together.
Victor, we also had messages of goodwill and best wishes from the Taikonauts aboard the Chinese space station. They sent their greetings. Let's watch some of that.
去年11月29日，在中国梦提出10周年之际，我们3人圆梦成功，也把很多小朋友的梦想带上了天宫。今天，第2届天宫画展正式在中国空间站开展，这也是我们送给大家的新年礼物。
So, Victor, these are, of course, exciting times for China, but as you look ahead, what sort of year do you think China is going to have in 2023?
The 2023 will be the year of the rabbit, as you mentioned, whereas 2022 was the year of the tiger. Now, in Chinese mythology, the year of tiger generally will be a year of turmoil, turbulence and fearsome events, for example, and I hope it will be behind us right now. The year of rabbit will be a year of joy, happiness, multitude, and reproduction, for example, and peace and stability, and speed. And all these good symbols represented by the rabbit in the year of rabbit, I hope will be demonstrated throughout 2023. 2023 will be a year of prosperity, peace, stability, and happiness and joy for the Chinese people, for everyone involved, for mankind as a whole. And let us do our best for the new year. Peace for the world.
Gabriel, how are young Chinese celebrating this Spring Festival on social media?
Well, social media is a huge thing. And I think today, not only young people are celebrating on social media. I'll just give you an example. Even my grandparents are using it. Like one vivid memory from my childhood is that on Spring Festival, my grandparents would just sit next to the phone for a couple of hours in the morning and just receiving phone calls or making phone calls to give New Year's wishes. And now, even this year, like my 86-year-old grandmother sent me a message on cell phone. So it was a very like thing in the moment. And social media also, I think it amplifies this holiday spirit in the sense that everybody was sharing about their journeys back home. Everybody was sharing what they were eating on New Year's Eve. So there were a lot of like virtual celebration among friends, among peers, and even across different regions. So there was a lot of element to that. And I think also another thing is that we just mentioned the Spring Festival Gala. They also went very heavy on social media influence, on technological, like innovative visualizations enabled by technology. So there were lots of, the technology elements, social media elements to it. And I think it's one of the reasons why it's still a prevailing cultural phenomenon is that it just keeps evolving. So yeah, what we're seeing is that social media modernizes traditional Chinese festival.
Okay, and that's where we have to leave it. Happy New Year to everyone watching from the team here at CGTN America. That is it for this edition of The Heat. Thanks for watching.
The nature of business is to